is developing new models for supply chain that will help you get closer to your customers. We're now going to welcome on the stage our moderator, Mr. Bharat Ramnath, Director and Industry Principal, ShipX.in. Good morning. Thank you for joining us here. He's getting mic'd up. And as he gets ready to walk onto stage, ladies and gentlemen, we also welcome all our panelists. Please put your hands together for our moderator, Mr. Bharat Ramnath. Good morning. Welcome. Our panelists, Mr. Umesh Joshi, Associate Director, SCM Perfetti Fonmel India Private Limited. Welcome, sir. Welcome on the stage, Mr. Abhishek Thakur, Head Demand Planning, Pidilite Industries Limited. We also welcome Mr. Sachin Gupta, Head CFC Supply Chain and SNOP Philips India Limited. Welcoming on the stage, Mr. Kanishka Basu, Demand Planning Lead India, Mondelez India Foods Private Limited. We have with us Ms. Neha Parekh, General Manager Planning, Godrej Consumer Products Limited. Also joining us, Mr. Anand R., Chief Supply Chain, Future Consumer Limited. We welcome Mr. Joseph Lim, Sales Director, APAC, Blue Jay Solutions. Joining our panel will be Mr. Vivek Garg, Director, Supply Chain Finance, Standard Chartered Bank. Also with us this morning, Mr. Vikas Kumar, National Head Demand Planning, Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages Private Limited. And finally, closing our panel this morning, Mr. Ashok Vasan, President, GTM, Pandocorp. Ladies and gentlemen, now for all our panelists, put your hands together. Let's make them feel welcome and know that we're going to be with them right through the next 60 minutes. We're going to request our moderator to take the session forward.
So we have everyone ready and mic'd up, and it's a pretty interesting and diverse panel, and I'm thankful to Martin for actually having woken up the audience, so he leaves me with less to do. So the topic itself is fairly broad, and what we'll do is we decided that we are not really going to talk generic stuff out here because that is something that everyone is already aware of out there. So if you look at the topic, it says new models for the supply chain that will help you get closer to your customer. So several questions, approaching this from the first principle, we can ask several questions which will help us drive this discussion forward. First question is customer, who is your customer, right? So you often know who you're directly servicing, but is that really your customer or is there more to that than that? Next question is closer to your customer. What does that mean? What does closer to your customer actually mean? Is it physical proximity? Is it speed of delivery of service? Is it about actually understanding your customer needs better so that you can actually service him better? And a more fundamental question, when you talk about new models, why are we talking about new models? Are the old ones not working? Right. So, or is it that there is a lot of new technology initiatives that are in place which enable you to think of new models which might actually do things a little more efficiently than the old ones, not to just throw away the old ones, right? So we'll use this as a basis, and what I've requested the panelists to actually do is to share some of their experiences from their life journey, either in their current organizations or in their past organizations, so that there are some stories that they can share with you related to these topics, and some of it might have worked, some of it might not have worked, both of which offer lessons for all of us. Right? So what we'll do is I think we're a little bit crunched for time, so what we'll do is we'll go around the panel once and we'll have each of the panelists share their experiences, and we'll, as quickly as possible, open it out for the audience to actually share their questions. So we'll probably start with Umesh, right? Now Umesh, I will name some brands so that you can easily associate Umesh with some picture. Mentos, Alpenliebe, Centerfruit, right? These are things that each one of you knows. And he's responsible for getting a lot of those products actually out to you. So Umesh, you did mention in a conversation we had around how you are actually using integrated business planning and what has changed within that in the last few years to actually enable you to serve your customers better. So if you want to just share some thoughts around that.
Good morning. Thank you, Bharat. So I take care of entire end-to-end supply chain planning for Perfetti Venmele India. As you are aware that we are world's #3 confectionery throughout the world, and we have globally we have very much emphasis on S&OP process basically, which is getting integrated with IBP. So we are globally implementing a advanced planning tool integrated with the S&OP process. So S&OP process starts with the 5 phases basically. It starts with the product and marketing meeting, where all new products, all transitions are discussed in detail, what will the launch timings. It is a basically outcome of the NPD funnel basically, the product which comes out, it is discussed with the supply chain and the properly all things are planned. Then we have then the IBP tool comes into the picture where the forecasting happens and all interventions are mapped with that tool with the help of the sales team and marketing team. And final, we freeze the forecast for 24 months where we say S&OP in 2 buckets, S&OE and S&OP. S&OE is sales and operations execution basically. The horizon is 1 to 4 months, and S&OP is horizon is 5th month to 24 months, where we discuss rough cut capacity as well as long term capacity also. Then that demand goes for discussion with the manufacturing team, where we discuss regarding all the manufacturing constraints and build a capability if somewhere required, and confirm back to the sales and marketing team. And then finally we do pre-S&OP and S&OP, which is led by our MD. And here is we are following the maturity model developed by Gartner basically. So where we see the success of the process in dimensions of outcome, metric, organization and the tool. So Gartner has developed a model where matured S&OP process is scaled as 5 basically. 5 is a nirvana stage. So we have done the all benchmarking of the Indian companies as well as our OC companies, other operating countries where like Vietnam, Indonesia, US, Europe. So we are somewhere at 3 basically. So our aim is to arrive at 0.4 in 1 and 2 years, where big emphasis on the customer service. So customer service in FMCG industries, companies measure the stock out at the point of distributor points. Now going forward, the future will be they will be measuring the stock out and fill rates at the point of sale label. So one modern trade is going to be a very big business in future in India. The CAGR is more than 20% for modern trade, and every company is building their tools, processes, so that they can service the customer much faster. So previously, like I was working with Britannia, where we have in fact done something called 0-day inventory concept. The dealer will be holding 0-day inventory. So those dealers which are large, they will be directly serviced on day basis the orders, and the system runs one way continuous replacement system, and the demand comes to the depot, and the next day the order is dispatched. So customer response is going to be very pivotal role in the growth of the industry. Especially I am coming from FMCG industry, where the customers will be getting new products much faster, and there will be lot of collaboration between the demand partners as well as supply partners, where our vendors also participate in terms of developing the product faster, and our logistic partners help us to deliver the product much speed. And the aim is to achieve the fill rate. Currently for general trade we have the fill rate of service level of around 98%. our aim is to touch 99% and reduce the service time. So we should be able to service our customer in within 1 to 2 days, pan India, through our depots.
Thank you, Umesh. I think a lot of these challenges are very easily identifiable to a lot of us, because one service point, one level increase is also a huge thing. We know how complex supply chains are. So taking this discussion further, Abhishek, again, names, brands that each of you are familiar with: Pidilite, Dr. Fixit, right? Fevicol. So now, Abhishek, how do you see things having changed in the last couple of years? What are these new models that we actually talk about?
Thanks, Bharat. So good morning to all. He already mentioned few of the brands, popular brands like Fevicol, Dr. Fixit, M-Seal, Fevikwik. We all may be knowing these brands because of its fancy ads that we roll out every year, and also the fact that in Indian households we are consuming these products every now and then, be it a festival way for the furniture setup, or be it for your waterproofing. We are consumers of these brands. So in a way, these are like a super brand. Now, when it becomes a super brand, your customer expectations become a significant point. Like, you can't let down your customers because you have developed into super brand. You can't take them for granted. So customer centricity for Pidilite has always been a topmost priority, right from day one. Recently, we have completed 60 years for a Fevicol brand. Many of you might not be aware of it, but Fevicol brand is in existence for last 60 years, and it is going to be there for another 100 years because of its brand value. Now, to maintain the brand value, it's not only a job of sales and marketing team to carry that brand value. In the back end, it's a supply chain managers, it's a supply chain team which delivers that product to the customer in a healthy way, in a accomplished manner, in a on-time delivery, in different forms of the deliveries. And that's how you create the brand value for that product. So as a supply chain manager at Pidilite, what we have done a transition from a push-based system. So earlier we had a forecast-based, fixed production schedule-based push system. Now we have migrated into a pull-based system. Now what is that pull-based system? So pull-based system essentially it's get defined by a customer demand. At every point, your customer will demand something from you. Correct? You translate it into a demand rate or the consumption rate. What we said that, look, whatever is customer is demanding, whatever is market is demanding, we have to honor that. And hence, if we have to honor that, we have to align entire supply chain, be it production, be it your distribution, be it procurement of RM and PM, raw material and packing material, according to your customer need. While doing so, you will do two things. One, you will meet your customer's requirement on time. Secondly, the obsolete inventory or the aging inventory that are there in the system, largely it will be taken care of. So we have implemented 4 years back, I think in 2015, a TOC-driven model. So theory of constraint, which was a concept coined by Dr. Eliyahu Goldratt. It's a very simple concept at the core, which works on the fact that whatever is marketed demanding, you replenish and you deliver that. And you keep on producing and supplying it throughout the nodes of the supply chain. And this has been a successful model for us for last 4 years. And now to extend that further, this has been done from the procurement, at the procurement leg, at the production leg, and then at the distribution leg, right from our distribution center to the depots. Now this year onwards, we have started extending it further to the WSS. So our wholesale stockist distributor, we have asked them to incorporate or come in hand with us, and then have a benefit of this model. Now, what they will gain? What is in there, what is in the store for them? Obviously, once we start working on them, we will always have a lean inventory for them. Their working capital will be saved, and their working capital, whatever is saved, we can ask them to employ in increasing the range of our product. Right now, they are only focusing on top A or B class SKUs, which are value generating. They might not be giving that much of value to the new products. And by saving their working capital, we are asking them to focus and invest in our new products so that they can showcase it well to the retailers and the customers. So we, at our, though I am actually heading a demand planning, but we don't call ourselves a supply chain planner. We call ourselves as a demand chain managers. So, that's a new concept that we should be, talking about, because supply chain still talks about and gives the notion of you are pushing this, pushing into the system. When you start talking about the demand chain manager, you actually looking at the demand of the market, and then that's how you start aligning yourself and aligning your activities according to that. So that's what we are practicing at the Pidilite right now.
Thanks, Abhishek. So that's one focus on customer centricity and viewing it from the other side and saying, I want to focus on the pull rather than push something down, and hence the flip from supply to demand. So Anand, as a representative from Future, you handle a very vast variety of product lines and with very different velocities and so on. So from a modern trade perspective, can you share some thoughts about how you view this whole customer centricity and customer segmentation and how you want to address it?
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, very nice to be here, and thanks for the opportunity to engage with a wider audience today. So if you look at Future as a group, maybe I'll start with a little bit of Future Consumer, who we are, and then kind of then put some thoughts around how we in the Future group kind of look at customer centricity. So Future Consumer is an organization, which is a fairly young organization, which in a way has been born in the modern trade context of India, right? Understanding that Indian needs of products and services are slightly different from typical modern trade way of thinking. And we've created this entire basket of products, right from what we call center of plate, which is all your dal, chawal, atta, sugar. So I don't know how many of you know Golden Harvest, Ekta as brands. Golden Harvest is one of our biggest brands that we run in the organization. And right up to farm to fork products, as well as our typical FMCG products ranging from food, personal care, and into beauty. So if you really look at the span of the products that we handle in Future Consumer, it touches everybody's life every day, possibly every minute, right? And it's been born in a modern trade context, and hence for us, Tathastu becomes the kind of motto which we work. And for people who may not be familiar with the term Tathastu, it just means so be it, right? I mean, if you think of something, we're able to kind of create it and provide it to you in a Tathastu, which is, I mean, it's a very Sanskrit and Indian way of saying, so be it. You will get it, right? So that's really our philosophy. So if I look at it, I think we place customer in the middle of everything. As a group, because we engage with customers from a retail lens. We've got our large format stores, which is the Big Bazaar Hyper Cities, and also a small format chain of Easy Day, Nilgiris, Heritage. I mean, some of these brands are more popular in the south of India, and some are more popular in the north and west parts of India. So ultimately what we have is, I mean, we thrive on the fact that we know our customers. People who walk into our stores are our, kind of source of inspiration for us to design products and services for them. So for us, customer centricity starts from there. What we try and do constantly in the organization is to really understand, what are the motives of a customer coming into the store? What is he or she looking for? Where are the gaps that we have? So finding those niches. So for example, we have a brand called Desi Atta, right, which has got variety, I mean, which has got customized products like, Sabudana Khichdi, based atta or something of that kind, which is very, very specific to a region. So those are the kind of insights that we kind of drive. Now, what that does to the supply chain is obviously it makes it very complex, right? So in the portfolio that I manage, I've got daily needs, which is like, something like fruits, vegetables, dairy products, packeted milk, packeted curd, which needs to be in the store at 6 a.m. in the morning, because that's when you expect the customers to start walking in and, taking those products, to, typical FMCG products like, Tasty Treat, chips or a namkeen or all of that, and also the center of plate products. So what we try and do is really segment the supply chain, make sure that, we run efficient networks which can cater to, these needs of the customer, because we need to be at the store at 6 a.m. in the morning for certain part of our portfolio. We need to be, collecting back a lot of stuff from the stores late in the evening, because when everything is over, you need to run a reverse logistics. So that's the context. Now, from purely how do you manage the planning of this, I think it all starts with understanding the customer. I think we, thanks to our retail environment, we do have a very rich set of data which keeps coming in, and with a reasonable real-time impact, I would say. That's what we kind of leverage in order to make sure that we are there just right, because being a modern trade-centric organization, we are very tight on working capital as everybody knows. So therefore, we try to prioritize, and that prioritization is actually done through all the data we get from our multitude of systems. So I think data is our oil. Data is what enables us to be Tatastu, wherever we are.
Great, thanks Anand. Now I just want to change the perspective a little bit and bring in Joseph. Maybe you want to share a tech solution provider's perspective on meeting these challenges.
Correct. Yep. Thank you, Bharat. Hello, can everyone hear me? Okay, fantastic. So what I'm hearing right now, it's fantastic. What I'm hearing is a lot of the demand, so-called the demand planning, as well as the management of the data. But what if we look at it a bit differently? A lot of the items, a lot of that good measurements, whether is it the KPIs that you have for your businesses or the KPIs that you have for your vendors, how do you push that to the collaboration phase? How do you build into that network? Because your supply chain is actually more than just your own organization, your own manufacturing floor, or your own transportation, your own trucks and so forth. A lot of us leverage, and a lot of my customers leverage on third-party logistics for warehousing, different carriers for the transportation needs, even raw materials. Raw materials, a lot of the time, manufacturers don't do their raw materials. All this collaboration happens. How do you leverage that network to actually make sure that those measurements get filtered down, get measured the same way as well, so that the customer experience is really, really enhanced? And when we talk about data and measurements, the benchmark, a lot of the times we look internally. That means we look internally as in, hey, my year-on-year improvements, what I did last year and what I'm going to do within the next year, what's that year-on-year improvement? But with that power of that network, that's where you can start to benchmark. What's that industry? Am I overpaying? Maybe your year-on-year improvement for this, maybe this very hot transportation leg. Let's say, for example, from Delhi to Chennai. Maybe you're saying that fantastic, I got a great discount from my carrier, I got my great discount from my third-party carrier, I'm saving 4% from last year. But when you benchmark it against your network, you could be seeing that the average cost savings for this particular leg is 7-8%. Your competitors are actually doubling so-called the savings that they have on this one particular transport leg and so forth. That's how maybe I want to talk about the network. How do you manage that whole collaboration piece? How do you manage your upstream as well as your downstreams? That means from raw material right down to the end customer, how do we drive that customer experience? Instead of just, that whole internal data is really important, but how do we translate that? How do we measure upstream? How do we measure downstream?
Thank you. And now I again want to slightly bring a different perspective here and get in Sachin. And have you talked to us about your specific supply chain and what addressing your customer needs means to you? Because it was very different from what we were hearing from everyone else.
Yeah, thanks Bharat, and good morning audience. So the concept of supply chain in a B2B environment like Philips Healthtech is very different from a FMCG industry or what Umesh shared or what Abhishek shared. So in fact, when I joined Philips from Johnson & Johnson, I had to unlearn everything in supply chain what I learned at J&J. So in B2B environment, it is really important to stay connected with your customer, because your customer himself doesn't know what does he want to buy or how does he want to buy. So the role of supply chain kicks in very early in case of a B2B environment. So we start engaging with the customer sometimes even before my sales guy goes and talks to the customer, because we tell them, we educate customer on how he should buy. So just quoting an example, we were recently reached out by one of the largest jewelers in Chandni Chowk in Delhi, and they were trying to set up a hospital as a charitable hospital, and they contacted us that they want to buy a MRI. And when someone from my team went to the customer and started asking questions about how do you want to buy MRI, do you have any specific duty exemptions or EPCG or SFI, or whether you want to buy it from our local entity or from our Netherlands entity, he was like completely puzzled. He didn't have any clue on any kind of supply chain concepts, or where do you want to buy, you want to bring it by air or by sea. So we actually put in a lot of efforts in educating customers on entire supply chain works, because most of these customers or hospitals do not have a full-fledged procurement function running around, or they don't have those experienced supply chain professional on board who learn all these supply chain concepts. So our role kicks in right there in educating customer about basics of supply chain, then partnering with them in terms of finding the right product. So we don't always try to sell our most, the highest high-end MRI equipment to all the customers, which doesn't fit them. So we try to look for the revenue model, how much, what kind of customers they will get for, what is the best suited product which will be economically viable for them, which will give them good kind of ROI. So that's where we co-create the need with the customer. And then selling a equipment, medical equipment is not the end of the revenue cycle. In fact, it is just beginning of the revenue cycle. Then the AMCs kick in, CMCs kick in, hardware upgrades, software upgrades, and then 5 years down the line or 7 years down the line, we offer them to buy back our equipment and sell a new one. So it's in this entire journey, we remain connected with the customer. And that's how it's very different in B2B environment. Now, what are we doing to leverage supply chain and staying connected with the customer, which is the topic of the discussion today, the new supply chain models. So most of the companies are moving towards from product selling to a solution selling kind of concept, right? I mean, when we also go to the customer, we don't necessarily offer them like we heard about Tathastu, right? I mean, we don't necessarily offer them selling MRI. We tell them you reach out to us with any problems. We are now into hospital designing also. We are now into setting up a full-fledged procurement services at the customer, and we are selling many other consulting services to the customer, because we are trying to leverage each and every touch point with the customer and help them understanding right product, understanding right point of supply chain, how should they buy, what should they buy, and how should they further sustain and continuously earn revenue. We also leverage a lot our on-ground customer service team in terms of staying connected with the customer. We have completely well-driven remote analytics of all the install bases of all the equipments which we have, so that we know which equipment is being used optimally. And when we find, suppose if we find that there is a MRI installed in a Bhopal, in a tier 2 in Madhya Pradesh, which is not being used optimally, we ourselves go ahead and approach to the customer that, okay, I think we are not using it optimally, we can buy it back and we can sell you another product which is much cheaper and where you can get better ROI. And this is the exact value which customer respects. And in our industry, because mostly the entire industry is driven by 3 major players, right? GE, Siemens, and Philips. So in our industry, a customer necessarily doesn't go by a brand. If a customer has to, if a small diagnostic chain or a hospital has to buy a cath lab or a CT scan equipment, they will first go and contact 10 different radiologists and how has been their experience of using different machines. So really a happy and satisfied customers actually becomes the key of our sustenance in the market. So that's why it is really important that we co-create value along with the customer, and that's how we are continuously leveraging supply chain touch points for that.
I think that those were very fascinating anecdotes that Sachin related. So very clearly, Tathastu doesn't always work in all models. But you know, when I want to actually go and buy Cadbury or Oreo, I know what I want, unlike a lot of customers of Philips. So let's move to Kanishka and understand from him how he has seen in the context of Mondelez some of these new models being played out, and how he actually sees demand planning evolution happening in this.
Thank you, Bharat. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Speakers have spoken about the need where you need to be more close to your customers or consumers. Now, the question that comes to my mind is, or that we need to address first is, who are your consumers? Is it the people who are at the retailer end? Are they your customers? or they are your distributors who are your customers or consumers, and what you want to be close to. From an impulse category perspective, which is chocolates or biscuits that we are talking about, I think the spectrum is quite wide, and it will start, so we have been dealing with the traditional trade or the general trade as we call it, and the modern trade, who has been the major part of our business. Now, within the traditional trade also, I think recently we have seen in the last 4 or 5 years, there is a demand that is getting generated from the rural India, which needs to be addressed very fast. Now, impulse category, rural, is a very difficult combination to have, because you have your wholesale network, you have your sub-stockist. So how do you address that? That remains one of the challenges that we have been faced with. The other end of the spectrum, if you look at it, it's the consumers who are totally glued into social media, say Facebook, Amazon, where people can just come, place a demand, and they expect the order to be fulfilled. So is your supply chain geared up to meet that those end of the customers also? What we have been able to do in Mondelez is very successfully, we have been able to manage both ends of the spectrum along with the modern trade and the general trade. Now, what helped us is definitely the integrated business planning process, which has been sponsored by the country leadership team or the top management team. That is one of the key drivers that we have been able to run the planning process very effectively, and which encompasses, as Umesh said, it encompasses right from product manufacturing to the supply, to the manufacturing, everyone. The other thing that has helped us is putting the right talents into the place and using the right tools. So the best talent should come to the planning, and that's what we have been emphasizing on, building capability within the team on how to build that, how to get those talents delivered for the better thing. The other end of this is related to planning. Now, on the other end of it, which is execution, I think there is a lot that has happened. So, for example, for the rural, we have partnered with our logistics service providers, with different transportation partners in terms of bringing innovative solutions, which can help us to make our logistics systems more efficient, reach out to people in a far less time, and meet their demands. And finally, what will change the demand planning scope for future is, we have been focusing on long-term demand, 0 to 24 months. But what is going to be more important with all the social media and consumer becoming more demanding is the demand sensing, which is the close range of 0 to 3 months. And that is where I think AI, machine learning will become more and more relevant to an industry like us.
Thank you. So again, I want to bring in another perspective to this whole story around getting closer to customers. And Neha, I want to come to you on this, because again, as a representative of Godrej out here, how do you actually go about figuring out what products to launch? Can you throw some light on your whole new product launch story? How do you meet customer as such, get closer to customer through this?
Thanks, Bharat, and good morning to all of you. I hope I'm audible.
Your
Yeah.
mic.
It's okay. I'll hold it like this. I hope I'm audible. Yeah. So good morning, all of you, and thanks for setting the context. We at Godrej have a very good saying that every household in India uses one Godrej product every day. And it is not true for the current generation. If you go 3 generations previous, so if you go and speak to your parents or the grandparents, and if you're lucky, even to your great-grandparents, this would hold true. So that is the legacy that Godrej as a group carries. I'm part of Godrej Consumer Products. And we also want to ensure that at least for the coming 5 generations, that holds true. So how do we sustain it? Is by bringing much more innovative products that stays relevant to our customers, because the market is evolving, the customers are using and changing the formats that they use. And hence the challenge in front of us was to, how do you launch the new products at the faster rate? And I'll give a very interesting context. As Indians, we all love cricket. So the new product launch has become something like a transition that Indian cricket has seen from a 50 over to a 2020. The number of runs remains the same. It's the run rate that has gone up. So for us also, the rate at which the new product has to be churned has increased significantly. And Godrej takes the pride to be the most innovative FMCG of India. We take 20% of revenues every year should come from products which are less than a year old. and that's an obnoxious target to hold. So in context, we said that the traditional method of developing a pilot, going to the test market, doing a CUT, then coming back, changing is not working. So we came up with an idea of setting up a new product factory, which is nothing but an incubator of developing new products. You go ahead, develop the product and launch it in a test market, see how the product is performing, and then launch it at a full scale. The other big change that is happening in the NPD area is you're not coming up just one product. You're coming with an entirely new range coming up, because that's what the customer is asking. So to give an example, we recently launched a men's grooming range under our iconic brand Synthol. It was 40 products launched at the same time. We are not coming with one product. We recently forayed into salon business, which was through Godrej Professional, our hair care regime, which was 60 products launched at the same time. Now, how do you pace up with such an innovation? Because as the innovation goes up, the rate of success goes down. And hence, you have to ensure that you develop products really fast. If it is not working, you fail fast and go ahead. So this concept of new product factory was really, really helpful, because that helped us incubate the products in the right way. The innovation pipeline was not limited just to lab, but we could even take small commercial runs and see how feasible the product is. Other is having the flexibility of launching it or having the flexibility of scaling it up really, really fast. I'll give an example of Fast Card. When we launched Goodnight Fast Card, it was actually a market disruptive innovation, because for rural India, having a solution which does not need electricity and is coming at a price point of ₹1 was really, really fantastic. Within the launch, in 6 months, the brand became 100 crores. So because we had that flexibility and we had created that scalability, it helps us scale up from a new product incubator to coming and servicing and catering a 100 crore need in the market. So that's what has helped us a lot. New product is going to be the way of life, and with the segmented supply chain, as we say, with e-commerce coming in, with modern trade coming in really, really big, it is really important for us that how do we design our back-end supply chain, which help us fill this pipeline. Because for e-commerce, you would need different kind of products, but very smaller runs. If I go and do it at my regular factories, it's going to impact my efficiencies, my productivities are going to go down, the pressure on cost is always going to go up. And hence, having such a flexible manufacturing setup, having value-added service center added next to your demand centers, helps us customize the product and postpone that to the last mile, and not create that postponement at your factories. That helps me drive my efficiencies at my factory, still help me innovate. Other thing is, it helps me innovate. So now if you go in Durga Puja, Goodnight might offer a different kind of a product for Eastern market, whereas when it comes Diwali, you might see a different hit offering coming for the Western side of the country or the Northern side of the country. So that's what is a new challenge, and I think as Godrej, we are really evolving in this space, and we see this only getting bigger. We might soon see a 2020 coming to a 15-15, who knows, but that's what we are gearing up to.
Fantastic. Thank you, Neha. And now we will hear from Vikas, because he comes from Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages and we know exactly what they do. But he also wants to shed some light on, when we talk about new practices being introduced, it's non-trivial, and there are a bunch of hygiene checks that need to be kept in mind before this actually happens. And Vikas wants to share some of his thoughts and experiences on this.
Thanks, Bharat, and good morning to all of you. So when we talk of a supply chain model which is closer to the customer, and we have all heard from a few of the panelists here, and there are different lenses at which companies look at their customers. Okay. So Umesh talked about zero-day inventory, which means the company as an enterprise would not carry the risk of inventory and would typically pass it on to the suppliers for better handling of the P&L. Sachin also talked about co-creating the need. He took an example of Bhopal, MRI machine, and how people from the B2B business can actually go and look into customers' pain points and co-create something which is, which is beneficial for both ends. So when we look at the customers, it's the prism that matters, and people often misconstrue customers as one single entity. Customers comes in all forms, shapes, and sizes. Customers can be something which can be, located at different geographies. They can be categorized into, different disposable income brackets. They can also be looked at in a view of past consumers, present consumers, and future consumers. And when we talk of a supply chain which caters to the need of the consumer, the first thing that most of the companies struggle, especially the supply chain, is to define the starting point. They usually start with cost to serve, and they typically tend to go for a lowest cost. But if you actually look at the wider horizon and the long-term view, cost definitely is not a concern if the service is good. So I think the reliability and the service, customer service is something which they fail to see most of it as putting at the starting point. So in my view, when you want to create something new, which has not been traditional and is catering to the customer, then the first starting point should be the reliability to service. How reliable you are, how the customer is always going to hold you accountable for the promises that you have made in the commercial agreements, in the service level agreements, and he or she would be completely sore if the promises are not kept. So that is the first point which all of the enterprises definitely should take a view on, and all the intelligent companies and the future looking companies do take a note of this part. The second would be obviously to understand the needs of the consumer or the customer. Consumer and customer are often interchangeably used, but they actually represent different blocks. Customer is something which is actually going to pay for your product. That is where you're going to earn your revenue from. But customer is someone who is actually ending up consuming your product or the service. In case of food and beverages like Coca-Cola or Pepsi or Nestle, we have a differentiated approach to look at both these brackets. And the supply chain design has to make sure that it caters to both the blocks. Having said that, there are other few areas where we actually take a closer look. When we actually deal with the customers, we don't talk about our KPIs. So KPIs would, if you look at supply chain typical KPIs, it would have forecast accuracy, it would have fill rates, IFOT, you name it, and it could come in any forms and size. But if you actually want to serve the customer the way they want it to be served, you should look at something which the Proctors and Unilevers of the world are doing. They talk of SAMBC, which means service as measured by customer. So they don't give a damn about what our internal processes are, okay? You might be measuring your internal performance using some traditional KPIs, but in a modern trade environment specifically, it's more imperative for the company to look at what the customers want. So SAMBC is a great concept. Many of the companies have started to use it in their engagement with customer, and that is something which is not only linked to supply chain, it's cross-functionally decoded, and all the functions, not only the sales or the operation, the commercial, even the finance is a partner to these kind of cross-functional KPIs. And KPIs need not only look at the product availability, quality, or the cost, but it also should envision about something which are smaller pain points. Like for example, how the shipping quality has been in terms of when the customer gets to see the stock first time, the first moment of truth, is he really satisfied? Is something which giving him a wow moment. So that's another area where most of the FMCG environment and also some B2B players are looking at. Fourth but not the least is also to understand the analysis on the cost to serve. Cost obviously is not going to go away. It's there on the P&L, and all of us in some way or other has a responsibility to cut down the cost. At the same time, making sure that we are responsible for agile and faster supply chain. So cost to serve, again, is a very dynamic concept. The moment you start to engage with the customer and design a supply chain, at that very moment, the cost dynamics could be different. While 3 years down the line, when the market dynamics change, competition comes into play, or there are some government regulations or some environment laws which can affect your margins and operating income, then the entire things goes for a toss. So it is something which is very dynamic, and as a process, we need to completely reinvent ourselves to make sure that we are taking a closer look at it. Last point which I also want to mention about here is also the data points. I think Martin in the opening address spoke about penetration. He spoke about internet and telephonic penetration. India sitting right at number 2 spot, and pretty possible that next 20, 30 years down the line will be number 1. So the data that comes to a company comes from different sources. It comes from distributors, customers, social media, XYZ, right? So as supply chain professionals, a big question for all of us is, are we actually looking to dissect this data, and are we realigning our supply chain design, which takes a closer look at understanding the customer needs in the future? If the answer to this question is no, then there's a big work for all of us to do. But if the answer is for this question is yes, then we are on the right step.
Thank you. So now we keep hearing this data is the new oil, but let's never forget the old traditional oil, which is money, right? So we have Vivek from Standard Chartered out here who heads their supply chain finance. And we broadly understand what supply chain finance is, the whole reverse factoring business. But he specifically wants to talk about some of the new ways of bringing in monetization into this entire game. So Vivek, over to you.
Thanks, Bharat. We help them. So there are a couple of solutions which are available, as if you either use your own treasury funds or else you use the banking system to ensure, there is a kahavat in Hindi, hing lage na fitkari rang chokha aata hai, right? So there is no effort which goes behind the kind of money. The treasurer doesn't need to shell out their money. At the same time, they can help us, we help them reduce the cost of goods sold and also increase their payable outstanding. So this is on the procurement side. On the dealer finance side, when you talk about 40 products to be sold, in a day's time, how do we launch? How do we ensure that there is a liquidity at the dealer side to buy those products and market it across the length and breadth of the country? And that is where, and the biggest challenge which we face on the dealer side is basically, how do you onboard those dealers? As bank, we can't avoid paperwork, we can't avoid the credit due diligence on these, and obviously they do not have the credit background, or the due diligence is not that strong, which we can take a call. And that is where we partner with our anchor client and ensure we not only onboard those dealers. Gone are those days where we used to take 8-10 days time to onboard those dealers doing a documentation. Today we talk about a day or 2 maximum to onboard our dealers and ensure we sanction the credit lines, and our anchors start dipping down on those facilities and start pulling funds from their account. So that is where we feel monetizing of supply chain will help our clients, not only our clients, but entire ecosystem in doing the work the way they do it. Thank you.
Thank you. So now yesterday on the sidelines, I was having a chat with Ashok, and there were some very interesting stories that he was actually relating to me, which I requested he must share with a larger audience. So again, as a tech solutions provider, if you could share some of your thoughts with the audience, it would be fantastic.
Yeah. Morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah. You can hear me. Can they hear me? All right. So good morning, everyone. Bharat, thanks for telling me about yesterday's story. I don't remember it. I'll try and recollect. I work for Pando, and the perspective I would like to bring is that I work with a number of my co-panelists, companies like Godrej Consumer and Mondelez, etc. So we get a sense of, our job is to try and figure out what is the best way to get the product to the customer. We help to optimize and to make sure that the products are reaching in the lowest cost possible to the end customer, right? Now what we are seeing is, and I'd like to break this up into two sort of perspectives. One is, what's causing a significant amount of change in the marketplace. The first is the consumer behavior and the consumer expectation is changing radically, and it's changing year over year, and I've fundamentally attribute that to tech for a large to a large extent. the e-commerce service providers are really upping the ante in terms of what consumers can now begin to expect. Social networks, social mobility, social behavior is also starting to change, and that aspect of what you and how you interact on a social media platform is beginning to work its way into corporates. Recommendations, rating, review systems, these are all becoming normal, and almost everybody, even in a professional setting, is starting to get familiar and more acclimatized to seeing that being implemented in corporate settings. Speed of service that the customer is expecting is now a given, and clearly that there is an intense amount of personalization that one is expecting. We used to hear about market size of 1, which is now much closer to reality than ever before. Now all this from the consumer side is playing out in the organizations that have to service these customers, right? So how do you personalize? How do you make sure that you're giving the speed at which the service is expected, and so forth? So one of the things that clearly we're seeing from some of these organizations that we work with is there is an overall sense of not just looking at themselves as an enterprise anymore, it is a network view. So from a tech perspective, there used to be a whole class of software which was enterprise software. Software now I believe there's a new category of software which is network software. You can't just be optimizing for within the 4 walls of your organization. You've got to bring in your entire ecosystem. We're seeing, for instance, Procter & Gamble bringing in their distributor network onto the planning platform. They are supporting that. The relationship between transporters, and we are in predominantly the fulfillment area, the freight area, the relationship between transporters and the shipper is becoming a lot more I guess cohesive, and it's expected to be mutually symbiotic. It's no longer just sort of I hate to use this, but a master-slave relationship. There is a significant amount of investment in transporter loyalty programs. It's not just about getting payment or working capital funding anymore. The welfare of the transporter, the welfare of even the driver is taken into account, but they're also bringing them on with enabling them with technology solutions. And it could be as basic as providing recharge money for their mobile phone, so that you can build a reliable fulfillment network. We're seeing that in order for you to be able to reach your consumer, you can plan as well as you want, but if the product ultimately doesn't get to the consumer, you've missed the boat. And therefore, what they want is a reliable network. They want to be able to track and trace. In order for them to track and trace, the phone has to be kept on. It's as simple as that. And therefore, you are even enabling the driver to be online as much as possible. Data is becoming extremely critical to address the personalization demands of the consumer. Data becomes extremely important. Now, data used to be used just for reviews. What we now see is it's being used more and more for predictive cases. And it's not going to stop there. Predictive essentially is going to start to say that, look, in the case of how many of us use Netflix or Amazon? There are recommendation engines that we say, because you bought this or because you viewed this, you should use that. In the transporter area as well, we are starting to see that happen, saying, we recommend for this rate, for this route, you might want to use this particular transporter. It's optimized across cost, across performance, across quality. So those are the kinds of things we are seeing. The last thing is this more dynamic work that is coming in. The traditional model was to have fixed routes, PDP, milk runs, fixed contracts. There's a whole element of dynamism being brought in to all of these areas. Why? Because the transporter that you used to work with on a particular model is not going to be able to service you, either because he's got fixed capacities and you want to reach new markets. That's going to change. The way in which you interact with that transporter is going to change. So you've got to provide services to the transporters, and the transporters in turn have to be more flexible to be able to take a direction from you in the way they're fulfilling. So it's a fascinating time. It's all driven by the way the consumer behavior is changing, and the consumer behavior around personalizations, expectation of speed, et cetera, is working its way into the corporate setting, and the entire ecosystem has to come together and take a network view rather than an isolated individual siloed view of where they want to be.
Perfect. Thank you, Ashok. So very quickly, I think there were some threads which very clearly emerged as a common across this entire discussion. Network centricity is very obvious now, and we are also talking more about collaboration and flipping this on its head from saying supply chain to demand chain, right? So, and that was a very fascinating example where, you know, if you need the driver to be involved in this whole story, you need to incentivize him. So AI for the driver is just an additional incentive, nothing more, right? So if for those sitting this side, we have one big clock here, okay, which is relentlessly rolling down this way, and it reads 5 minutes left. So we've done a great job of managing our time. Now we'll just open it out to the audience, and I have a couple of requests, right? One, since we are short of time, I would request you to keep your questions pretty sharp and focused, and let's not have a 11th panelist. So if you can just ask a question, please identify yourself and address a specific individual on stage, it would be fantastic. So with these two requests, I would open it out to the floor. Yes, there's a lady back there. If we could get the mic across to her. Please lift your hand again, ma'am, so we can spot you. Yeah.
Hi, this is Shweta from Exchange. My question is for Mr. Ashok. So I really like the way Ms. Kakkar from Godrej said that she is distributing the entire, you know, the manufacturing thing into innovation line, into mail line. But with this, the number of sites that probably Godrej has to manage increases. So when technology comes into place, what happens is when we have a lot of manufacturing sites, the many sites are also in the remote areas. So technology is a very distant thing for these people who are in this remote part. So how to reach out to them? What's the best way?
Are you referring to technology at the manufacturing facility or the consumers?
Yeah, because according to the internal management, because when I'm running a company, I would be having multiple number of sites, and many of the sites might be in the remote areas. In that scenarios, how to collaborate my entire business? How to make sure that whatever comes in from the demand side gets fulfilled in the right time?
Okay. I'll break that up into two parts, if I may. And this is my perspective, so you can give me yours at a suitable point. What we have found is, you know, at least when it comes to establishing facilities in remote areas and the connectivity, at least through, you know, broadband connectivity or internet connectivity, we are able to see connectivity across, or even telephony for that matter, we're able to see connectivity there. Where the challenge gets to be is in actually fulfillment, where, you know, when you're actually trying to work with a transporter or a truck driver who's reaching, you know, there might not be wireless connectivity as much as we would like. That is a challenge. We do see other technologies, you know, SIM-based, et cetera, to at least find a sensible approximation of where that particular, you know, shipment or that particular truck is at any given point in time. I expect that this will radically change over the next 12 to 18 months. So, you know, I don't think there is, you know, there used to be this notion of a digital divide. I see that disappearing really rapidly. In terms of consumption of technology, in terms of being able to interact with various people in the ecosystem through technological devices, as well as you know, to be able to reach all corners of India. That's my observation. There are certain challenges, like I pointed out, but I see that disappearing fairly fast.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? Was there a hand raised? Yeah. if we can get the mic across.
Yeah, hi. Good morning, everybody. I'm Aditya from Gokul Dairy. I have one question for the panelist. It's about the kind of expectations of the consumers with the emergence of latest delivery apps in the mobiles, where you have 30-minute delivery challenge from Zomato, Swiggy. I mean, it's a new age fastest delivery methods which has come at the last leg of the consumers. And at the same time, still we have, as sir from Britannia has said, there is 2 days of lag time which takes for the orders for the general trade market to be processed and delivered. So this kind of vast gap, like from 30 minutes to 2 days, how it's the biggest challenge for the industry as such. And I would like to know, like, how we can synchronize and make it short and take some drastic steps.
Any particular person you're directing the question to?
Like, sir, I have worked with Britannia and now with the Perfetti and Melee.
I will answer your question. 2 days, I said to the distributor, not to the customer. See, customer is going to the retail and picking the product. So whenever you are going in the store, most of the time you are getting the product, okay? And you, as a company, we are replenishing the stocks of the distributor, and distributor is replenishing the stocks of the retailer, basically, right? And you, based on the scientific data, you are deciding on how much inventory your retailer or your distributor will be keeping at 95 plus service level, basically. Most of the time, whenever customer walks into the store, he gets the product. In terms of wherever is customer is bigger dealers, let's say, so daily basis it is serviced. He is carrying minimum inventory and getting the product on time. So in case of lights, you are in dairy business, in case of dahi and milk products, daily directly from the factory it goes to the outlet points and it drops, basically. The milk and those products, you get within the hour the product, basically. It depends from the product to product, what one, whether you want milk or you want atta or pulses or sugar, basically. So there is a lot of segmentation how the product to be serviced to the customers, and I think a lot of work is happened and will be happening in this area, and customer will be getting product within 30 minutes also, wherever it is required.
That is the best we can hope for, given the perishable nature of the dairy and food products.
Yeah, so let me just, sorry to cut you short, but we can take this offline. I have a red 2 flashing out here. So I just wanted to quickly sum up by saying that you're right in the sense that, the expectations that have been set by the B2C organizations is clearly impacting so many different factors of the B2B supply chain too. And there are different models that are being tried out by different people, all the way from, the new product launch, speeding up the new product launch, to helping with supply chain finance, to mobile apps being used by B2B and making it network centric and so on. Disintermediation is another strong play that is being tried out, where you try to get closer to the customer by removing some of the links in the chain altogether. So I think that is a good sum up of the discussion, and it was a good ending. Your question actually led to that summation. With that, we would like to close this panel, and hopefully there was some learnings for a bunch of you from this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a memento for each one of our panelists for your lovely contribution, for your time here with us, and we're going to request our moderator to present a memento to each one of our panelists. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to thank Mr. Umesh Joshi. Thank you for your time and presence this morning. Mr. Umesh Joshi, Perfetti. Thank you. Mr. Abhishek, thank you for your time here. Mr. Abhishek from Pidilite Industries. We'd also like to thank Mr. Sachin Gupta from Philips India. Mr. Kanishka Basu from Mondelez India. Ms. Neha Parekh from Godrej Consumer Products. Thanking Mr. Anand R. from Future Consumer. Also a big thank you, Mr. Joseph Lim, Blue Jay Solutions. Thank you, Mr. Vivek Garg from Standard Chartered Bank. With us on stage, Mr. Vikas Kumar from Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages. And please put your hands together for Mr. Ashok Vasan from Pando Corp. That's quite a trek off. All right, well, and now, ladies and gentlemen, our moderator, we'd like to say a big thank you, requesting Mr. Umesh Joshi to kindly present the memento to our moderator on behalf of all of us. Thank you, Mr. Bharat Ramanath. Thank you. Perfect with time, and all our panelists contributing beautifully. Let's have a group photograph, I think. Yes, our photographer is all ready. Ladies and gentlemen, a wonderful panel discussion. I think it calls for a round of applause that's resounding. Thank you very much.